and welcome. I am going to work in my garden at home today because I've got lots of perennials and fruit trees and fruit bushes that need an awful lot of attention. I've been concentrating so much on the allotment that I've kind of taken my eye off my garden, and today we're going to get cracking and get a lot of jobs done that I probably should have done before now. But the first job I did this morning was to check how my seed potatoes were doing, because I had Cara as main crop last year and Desiree, and we've been working our way through the Cara, and the Desiree have been underneath them in this bag. And when I checked on them the other day, I discovered we have got loads of potatoes that have got those horrible white sprouts on them. So these are not really that good now for using. You could use them at a pinch, but my opinion is that you could take all those white bits off and plant them, but that tuber has already put a lot of energy into producing these white spindly shoots. So I'm always a bit hesitant to use them if they've got into that much of a state. But I might plant a couple in a pot maybe and see. But the rest of them I shall use up in a recipe that I really like. So hopefully I'll get to share that with you today. But we'll do that a bit later. So I went to the garden centre this morning to have a look and see if they've got any seed potatoes. And they did, but they are quite limited now on the number of seed potatoes. So if you want your seed potatoes and haven't got them yet, go and get them. So what I got from the garden centre this morning was Mozart as my main crop, Wilger as my second early, Maris Bard as my first early, Cara as another main crop, and then Maris Piper as another main crop. And I got some ericaceous feed for my raspberries and blueberries. I bought some sunflowers, which is sunburst mixed, to grow along with Linda over on the Feel Good Garden. Plant labels, because you always need plant labels. And then I got some compost, some ericaceous compost at the bottom, just to top up the raspberry bed. And in here then are those horrible sprouty Desiree potatoes. So it is really rather cold today, but I am going to get on with doing my raspberry plants. So let's go and have a look at what I've got to do there. These raspberry canes are autumn fruiting raspberries, so it's time now that I cut them back. Normally I've done this by now, I do it in about February time, but I just haven't had a chance this year. So it's absolutely fine to cut them back now, but I have noticed there's some bud growing on the old canes, and there are new canes poking up through the ground. So I want to get this done now so that the energy is going into the ones coming out of the ground, rather than trying to make these ones refruit, because they won't refruit very well. So I'm just going to cut them all back with my trusty secateurs, which I have just sharpened, and hopefully we'll get some good raspberries this year. So I'm going to cut the canes to about 1 inch above ground level. That should be fine. And I was hoping to move these raspberry canes this year to dig them up and make some new plants, but I haven't got around to doing it because the crown of the raspberry plant is now looking rather crowded, and a lot of the new growth is coming from outside, like around the periphery of the plant. So I will need to sort that out next year. So I've cut down the canes now. All that's left for me to do is to mulch the bed. So I've got some ericaceous compost here, and I'm just going to put a circle around the base of the crown, and that should then hopefully feed it for this year to come. And maybe I'll put a bit of bloodfish and bone on the bed as well when I'm doing my trees and things. So let's get on and mulch. Would you believe it? I had enough compost to do all of them but this one here, which is typical, isn't it? But I do need another bag of compost for my blueberries back here. But don't look at them, don't look at them. They're far too weedy. I need to sort them out. So I'll get a bag of compost at some point and we'll do the blueberries. But let's go and have a look at my trug at the top of my garden, because it's got parsley in it, which is looking in need of some work. This is my homemade veggie trug. It's got parsley in it at the moment and some spring onions, but it's got a bit out of hand. So I just need to trim away some of the parsley so that we can use it. But I'm not sure if I will keep this trug here. I might take the legs off and use these boxes down my allotment for carrots rather than keeping it here, because it's a bit on the wonk, in all honesty. I think it's the ground. It's not my building, honest. But I think it's been here for about 3 years now, and it's not looking its best. So I think I'm going to dismantle this and repurpose it. For the time being, I'll just tidy up this parsley so it looks a bit better in the front garden. Well, that was the work of about 5 minutes. It didn't take me long to tidy up the parsley at all. I'm just adding some fish blood and bone into the mix, just to give it a little bit of help now. It's started to wake up for the winter, for the summer. And I'll just mix that in like that now. But this is done. And now we've got some parsley we can harvest as well. A little ladybird, look. Happily munching on the parsley. Well, I don't think it's munching on the parsley, but it's nice to see. I haven't seen any yet, so it's nice to know they're about. Let me show you the nematodes I've got for the strawberry plants and what I'm going to do with them. On my last vlog, I started sorting out my strawberry plants, and I just left these top ones because I didn't get around to doing them, but I have got around to doing them now. When I was doing these ones here, the compost in there had a bit of vine weevil. So I've got some nematodes. And that's what they look like. And then, let's put that there. And they look like that. So I've got to take them out of here and add them to 1.2 litres of water and mix them around. This will give me a stock, and then I put a third of this into a watering can, fill that watering can up, and then water the strawberries with it. So let's get that done. So it did say to use a watering can with a fine rose, but I haven't actually got one anymore that fits this watering can. So I'm just using my eye, as it were. But if you've got a watering can with a fine rose, then maybe use the fine rose. So that's another job done. Hopefully that will be my strawberry plant sorted out now. In case you don't know what nematodes do, they sort of, the maggots, the vine weevil will eat them, and then they kind of eat the vine weevil from inside. So it's not very nice, it's not very pleasant. I don't really like doing it, but unfortunately I have to do it in this instance. Somebody did say to me in the comments on my last video, I should have thrown the compost away, and they're probably right. I probably should have done that rather than the way I've done it, but that's the way I've done it. So last year, I remember I did put the compost out on a bed on some cardboard, and I let my chickens loose on them, and that seemed to do the job as well. So there's a few ways you can get around vine weevil, but hopefully this will sort out the problem for this year. Right, it is absolutely freezing. I don't know if my nose is running, but I'm really cold. So let's go find something to do in the greenhouse. So I need to have a huge cleanup in this greenhouse. There's compost all over the floor from where my chickens have been in here and scratched in my bed. I've got some bulbs here. There's mostly tulips and some daffodils. And the other side I've got alliums, but nothing is showing up on the alliums yet. But I'm going to move them to outside because they don't need to be in here anymore. And then the space that I'm going to create with these, I've got some mustard seeds and some mustard plants rather, and some lettuce plants that I want to put in here ready to grow for the hungry gap. I really need to clean this greenhouse. It is hardly letting any light, so that is on my list to do. Whether I'll get it done today, I don't know, because I've got to take my son to a party, and I don't know if I'll get the other jobs done, so I won't mention them yet until I know if I'm doing them. But let's get these bulbs moved and start potting on those mustard plants. I'm just going to put them round the front with my other pots of compost that are ready to go to the allotment. I'll just leave them here so that they're ready to go in the car when I've got the space clear at the allotment. Got the last batch here now. Annoyingly, the second batch, the tray broke as I was bringing it over. So some of those bulbs have been disturbed now, which is a little bit annoying, but hopefully they'll be okay. So these can now be out here acclimatising to the cold, and we can go and get on with doing a bit more in the greenhouse. So I'm just tidying away some of the old saucers that I've left on the floor, which capture the water from the pots. And that piece of material I've just put up there are the old capillary matting from my quad grows, which I've left to dry out in the greenhouse. And then I'm sweeping the floor, which I must have done about 5 times when I was cleaning this up, because I kept getting more compost on the floor as I was tidying up. So eventually I managed to sweep it all into a pile and get it out onto the bed for the time being. When I was just sweeping up in my greenhouse, I found these, which are the capillary matting for the quad grows, and I left them there to dry out so I could take off the old roots. And I found the best way to get rid of those old roots is to just sweep them over with this brush, and it seems to get rid of quite a lot of the the roots. So, and then I just pick out the ones that are really big. But it means that I should be able to use these again. I don't think there'll be any harm in using these. Right, I'll pop these into the quad grows so they're all together. So I've had a bit of a tidy up in here. These are some of the mustards and lettuce that I'm going to pot on. The others are still in the house. I've still got the tomato pots that were here from last year. I haven't cleared them away, but I have sort of tidied up this area here and put them more in a sort of like usable way, so I know that there's big pots and small pots and I can get hold of them as and when I need to. A fairly cleanish floor, but because I was filling up these pots over here, I got some a bit of compost on the floor, but I'm not that bothered about that. So what I'm going to do is pot those ones on now. And after planting the mustard and lettuce plants on, I decided to make a start on taking the compost out of this raised bed. So I'm filling up a compost bag, which I'll be taking down to the allotment and using down there on my new raised beds when I get round to doing them. And then I took the sides off the beds, which came out quite easy actually, so I was pleased about that. And maybe I'll repurpose this wood down the allotment as well, but I'm not entirely sure because it is quite rotten. And then I thought I'd have a go at using the pressure washer to wash the greenhouse glass, but this was not very successful at all because it just made everything very, very wet, but it didn't actually get the algae off the glass. So I then resorted to the old sponge and bucket method, and I washed the glass and the frame down with hot soapy water first, and then I went over the glass with water mixed with vinegar that time, so that it would get rid of any of the streaks from the washing up liquid, and the glass would then be clear so the sun can get through it and make my plants grow. I'm very pleased to report that I got the jobs done that I wanted to get done. So I planted up my mustards and lettuce as I told you, and I've put them now all on the floor for the time being. They should be fine down there. My staging is clear at the moment, but I have got my tray to grow units on here, which are an autopot system that I invested in last year, and they're sort of like a multifunctional tray as it is. So I can start seedlings off. I've got trays to start seedlings off in here, and you connect it up to a water butt or some sort of water system, and it will self-water the seedlings for you, and then you can change it, and you can have potting on plants in here as well, and again they'll self-water because you can put down some capillary matting. And then last summer I used them to put grow bags in to grow some tomatoes in, and they have little like spikes that fit in the holes in these ridges, and they pierce the bag and allow the water to get up into the bag, so they water themselves essentially. They're up here at the moment. I was hoping I could get the two here, but this one it's hanging off too much, so I won't be able to do that, which was what I was wanting to do, but never mind. I'll just have to have them in a long line instead. That's no problem. But I'll sort that out another day. I've cleaned the glass, which so you can't tell now because it's a bit misty in here, but I have cleaned the glass and it's so much better in here now. I took out the raised bed that was here as well, and I dug out all the compost that was in the raised bed, and now I filled a lot of bags. I filled about 10 bags, so they can all go down to the allotment and fill the raised beds when I get round to putting them in, which will hopefully happen really soon. I'm really pleased with what I've got done. I'm Bethan, and this has been a lovely job.